The snow fell in heavy sheets across the colony world of Arcturus Prime, a planet where 3 suns had once burned bright but now lay dormant in their cosmic sleep. Eric hunched over his workbench, his weathered hands carefully painting the face of a wooden doll. The Toymaker's shop was modest, tucked between the recycling plant and the abandoned mining office in Sector 7, the forgotten corner of humanity's expansion into the stars. He had been alone for 15 years, ever since the colony ships stopped coming. The corporations had deemed Arcturus Prime unprofitable, and one by one, families had left for better worlds. But Eric remained. Someone had to remember what joy looked like, even if there were no children left to receive it. The wind howled outside, rattling the transprestial windows. Eric glanced up from his work, squinting through the frost-covered glass. That's when he saw her, a small figure huddled against his door, scaled and shimmering even in the dim light. At first, Eric thought his old eyes were playing tricks on him. But no, there she was. A draconid child, no more than 7 cycles old by his estimation. Her silvery blue scales dulled by cold and hunger. The draconids, humanity's ancient enemies, the species that had fought mankind across a dozen star systems before the Treaty of Io, had brought an uneasy peace. Eric had fought in that war, had seen friends die to draconid plasma fire. But that had been decades ago, and the creature shivering at his door was just a child. He opened the door slowly. The draconid child looked up at him with enormous golden eyes, vertical pupils contracting in fear. Her small wings were wrapped tightly around her body, and her breath came out in visible puffs of vapor. She didn't run. She simply stared, too cold and exhausted to move. "Come inside," Eric said softly, stepping aside. The child hesitated, then crawled forward on all fours, her movements weak and unsteady. Eric closed the door behind her, sealing out the brutal wind. His shop was warm, perhaps the only truly warm place left in Sector 7 since the power grid had been reduced to minimal capacity. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling down to her level. The child's mouth opened, revealing small, sharp teeth. She made a series of clicks and whistles, the draconid language. Eric didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. "All right, I'll call you Flora," he said, remembering the flowers that once grew on Earth, delicate and beautiful things he'd only seen in pictures. "You hungry?" Flora's eyes followed him as he moved to his small kitchen area. He had ration bars, synthesized protein, nothing fancy. He broke one in half and offered it to her. She snatched it from his hand and devoured it in seconds, then looked up at him hopefully. Eric smiled sadly. "That's all I've got for now, little one. But you're safe here." Over the following days, Eric learned Flora's story in fragments. Her family had been part of a draconid merchant ship that had crashed in the northern wastes. She had walked for days, following the lights of the colony, only to find it nearly abandoned. The few remaining humans had driven her away with shouts and thrown debris. Only Eric's door had been open. The Toymaker and the Dragon Child fell into an unlikely routine. Eric would work on his toys while Flora watched, fascinated by the intricate mechanisms and painted faces. She was curious about everything, touching the wooden soldiers and porcelain dolls with gentle claws, her eyes wide with wonder. One evening, as a particularly vicious storm raged outside, Flora began to shiver uncontrollably. Her scales, designed for her species' warmer homeworld, provided little insulation against Arcturus Prime's cold. The heating system in Eric's shop was failing. Struggling to maintain even a minimal temperature, Eric watched as Flora curled into a tight ball. Her wings wrapped around herself, small whimpers escaping her throat. He looked down at his own coat, thick, insulated garment he'd worn through countless winters. It was the only thing keeping him warm. Without hesitation, Eric removed his coat and wrapped it around Flora's small body. The child looked up at him in confusion as the human sat back in his chair, already feeling the cold seep into his bones. "It's all right," he whispered, his teeth beginning to chatter. "You need it more than I do." Flora's eyes widened with understanding. She unwrapped herself from the coat and tried to return it, making urgent clicking sounds. But Eric gently pushed it back toward her. "Keep it," he said. "I'll be fine." But he wasn't fine. Within an hour, Eric was shaking violently, his lips turning blue. Flora watched him with increasing distress, making sounds that might have been cries for help in her language. Finally, she made a decision. The small dragon child crawled onto Eric's lap and spread her wings around him, pressing her scaled body against his chest. Then, something remarkable happened. A soft, golden glow began to emanate from beneath her scales. And warmth, real, genuine warmth, flooded through Eric's body. He gasped in surprise. "Flora, ... The child looked up at him and made a soft, cooing sound. Eric realized what she was doing. Draconids possessed an internal heat generation system, a biological furnace that allowed them to survive in various environments. Flora was sharing her warmth with him, the same way he had shared his coat with her. They sat like that through the night, human and draconid, each keeping the other alive in the cold darkness of an abandoned world. When morning came and the storm had passed, Eric looked down at the sleeping child in his arms. He thought about the war, about the hatred and fear that had divided their species, and he thought about how easily that could all disappear in the face of simple kindness. "We're going to be all right, Flora," he whispered, gently stroking her scaled head. Together, outside, the first rays of a waking sun began to paint the snow gold, and in a small toymaker's shop in the forgotten corner of the galaxy, two unlikely souls had found what the rest of the universe had lost: the warmth of compassion that transcended species and stars.